Dr. God, you were recently in India. Are you seeing similar growth in the infrastructure in India? And maybe you can take just a few minutes before talking to us about what you're doing at UCLA and how you see the wireless technology going the next step internationally.
Yes, so I head up UCLA's Wireless Internet for the Mobile Enterprise Consortium, and I also head up UCLA's recently formed Smart Grid Energy Research Center. And in the Smart Grid Energy Research Center, we are creating a demonstration program in partnership with LADWP, USC, and JPL in showcasing what smart grid as a technology that utilizes wireless information systems, communications, and sensor networks, what this technology can do in the process of modernization of the grid as we know it today. The grid today is really, if you look at the grid in California, it's about 100 years old. If we talk about wind and we talk about solar, we talk about renewables, geothermal, and so forth, but if the way the grid is designed that was meant as a hierarchical distribution system where you have a large number of energy generation sources and a large number of energy sinks, that's a top-down architecture, and that does not work when everybody in their home wants to put, let's say, solar and send that energy back into the grid. So the grid architecture has to be completely rethought out, and so we are creating a demonstration program that is funded by Department of Energy, that is part of the Smart Grid $3.4 billion initiative that Secretary Chu had started, and so we are part of that. Now, if you look at smart grid, what is happening in the US, you know, we certainly are doing a lot here. There's a lot of technology, a lot of IP that is coming out. I was in India, I talked to the heads of two large metropolitan utilities in northern India in New Delhi, and you know, they have just gone through a process of privatization. A lot of the utilities are being privatized now, and many have been privatized in India, and that means there's a different type of an opportunity. Now here's utility, the Delhi, one of the two Delhi big municipal utilities. Remember, Delhi is a 20 million population city. One of the utilities said they had losses of 50% before they were privatized. Now the losses are about 15%. When they say loss, they don't mean transmission loss, they mean theft. A very different business altogether. So as you privatize, they can now sell the power to the real customers that are willing to pay and who want it. There's a great opportunity to sell all kinds of IP, all kinds of infrastructure in, for example, a place like India, because now they're just building the country out. There's a population of over 1 billion people, and they're building roads and bridges and highways, and they're building out the grid. And you know, their approach is, well, if we're going to put in a meter today, why not put in a smart meter? It's cheaper to put in a smart meter today than to put in an old mechanical meter. So the opportunity for having advanced technology be part of the grid in countries like India and China, and of course right here in the States, I think are tremendous.
What are you seeing in terms of some of the regulatory hurdles as your clients are going international?
Well, we're environmental consultants, so companies come to us to help if they want to buy either a piece of land to develop a plant in China, or they want to buy a Chinese company or something like that. And one of the things that we've seen is that if you're from the West, the rules, while they're on paper the same, you tend to get treated different than a Chinese national company would, and generally held to a bit of a higher standard. Again, the rules are the same, the enforcement isn't always. And so it pays to do your homework up front to make sure you understand what rules you might be held to if you're in China or in India, as opposed to what the plant that's there now that you're thinking of buying is being held to. And I think that it can make a huge difference to what your cost structure is, how much capital you're going to need to spend, if you're not careful with that.
Ignatius, you were mentioning all the opportunity in China, and you were talking about wind power and solar, and do you foresee in the near future that those industries are going to be more consolidated? Do you think there's going to be a threat of overcapacity at some point?
Well, I think two things. I think I just want to elaborate a bit more on Jonathan's point about the Chinese government, fully behind this drive to go clean tech and to achieve a significant level of clean tech energy by 2015-2020 as part of their 11th or 12-year plan. One thing is a bit different in China when, as Jonathan has said, the government is fully behind it. They've got the dollars to back it up. The dollars, in a sense, are more freely accessible and more freely available with less handcuffs than what you have here. And it's not stimulus money, it's just excess surplus money that they have to drive their national agenda. That's number one. Number two is that a large number of the generation companies in China are state-owned. And a lot of them now embarking on the renewable energy, particularly in wind and solar. For wind, for the last couple of years, what has happened before the feed-in tariff was established was that project proponents or promoters had to bid for, obviously, the most attractive tariffs. That drove prices or tariffs down to a point that the projects were commercially and financially unsustainable. And yet the projects were built. Why? That's because the Chinese state-owned companies undertook the projects. And from a macro governmental perspective, it's a left pocket, right pocket approach. So it doesn't quite matter if the state-owned companies actually lose money on some of these renewable energy projects, whether it's wind, solar, or biomass. The point is that they are part of the bigger picture to achieve the target that's been set by the government in terms of what the renewable energy component would be in the overall scheme of things. So that's a snapshot of how China's approaching and trying to achieve the very ambitious targets that they have set for themselves. With the introduction of the feed-in tariff for the wind sector, that has stabilized somewhat the irrationality that has gone into some of the prior projects. It also means that to some extent it has levelized somewhat, not altogether, the playing field for foreign participants. Foreign participants are also looking at and awaiting anxiously. It was supposed to have been settled last year in 2009. It has been announced that it will be settled this year, but it's yet to be settled. The feed-in tariffs for the solar sector. We are currently, and this is public information, we are currently advising First Solar on their first China solar project. And it will be, when built, probably the largest solar energy project anywhere in the world. It's 2,000 megawatts in Inner Mongolia. Obviously, the feed-in tariff for solar would be of vital significance for this project. So wind certainly has captured a significant proportion of the renewable mix. Solar, the Chinese government is trying to push to achieve about 10,000 megawatts of solar. Currently, it's about 100 megawatts. 10,000 megawatts by 2015. Again, extremely aggressive. In terms of where the more cutting-edge opportunities are, I think it would be smart grids. They are extremely eager to implement smart grids throughout the country. In fact, there's been experimental sort of sections within the various grids, northeast, northwest. That's how they are divided on various smart grid technologies. CCS, which is carbon capture and storage, the Chinese actually have been ahead in the game. They've got a significant number of projects going on. And one particular one in which they have actually mastered the coal gas gasification, and it's coal to liquids, is where they had the five local majors pushing for this project, and Peabody of the U.S. is also a participant to that. That's supposed to kick off, I think, sometime next year. One other point, and that relates to the auto industry, is BYD, which 6 years ago was just manufacturing car batteries. Today have put into commercial production hybrid, plug-in. I think it's 1.3 million cars that's being tested right now. So 6 years. All it takes for a car battery manufacturer to get into hybrid class in 6 years.